Hi, everybody. Okay, so yes, I'm back for another episode review of this Hulu miniseries. Thank God it's a miniseries of Kindred by my beloved Octavia Butler. The only reason why I have not given up completely on watching and reviewing this series is because I know for a fact that more people in this country watch TV than they ever will read books. And somebody will look for a review after watching this. And even if only 3 people in the world ever see this, I don't care. It's worth me correcting. Okay, so anyway, this is the Kindred Miniseries, episode 5, Winnie. Winnie, which is great because Winnie was never a character in the book. She actually doesn't exist either, along with Olivia. Okay, so anyway, we start with this scene with Luke, who's reprimanding Carrie, and Carrie is the daughter of Sarah, who's basically essentially the head enslaved person for the house, right? And he's reprimanding Carrie for drinking with Rufus. Um, Rufus stole his father's alcohol. Like I told you in the book, Tom Wayland was a serious alcoholic, very violent man, so on and so forth. But this scene where he's reprimanding Carrie, who's a mute, for drinking with him was bullshit. Okay, so he sends the poor white Luke the black slave, sends the poor white, obviously Irish immigrant back to the fields after snatching his gun because he basically says Carrie was drinking with Rufus, so on and so forth. That's not even close to the real book, okay? First of all, black man snatching a gun. Slaves weren't allowed to have guns, firearms, anything else like that. Hell, they didn't want them to hardly have no rakes and shovels, but they knew they needed to do their work because any of that would lead them to rebellion. I mean, this is on the books. I'm not making this up. Slave state to slave state, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi. Like, those things are there. They can't have that. And so for a black slave snatching from a white man, we are not in the autobiography of Frederick Douglass where he actually snatched that whip and beat that white man's ass who was like clearly essentially poor white trash and had a job overseeing on the plantation, but see to actually Mr. Covey, this was in Frederick Douglass's autobiography of his real life, for a poor white to have to report that a slave kicked his ass was kind of like shit, so it stayed quiet. This whole thing, like Luke is so in charge of the other part of the plantation, is some bullshit. It's not even close, not only to the real book, but for that time period. Hell, I'm hard pressed to believe that shit in 2022 could happen with a black man snatching a gun from a white man and there were no consequences. Okay. So anyway, Rufus, of course, takes up for Carrie because once again, he's a good white person and he's still innocent. And he says that she has nothing to do with it. Y'all let Carrie go. Anyway, then we get the quick but violent scene with one of the cooks smacking Carrie upside her head. I mean, literally smacking her upside her head and say, "Don't act like you don't hear me." Okay, everybody knows that Carrie is a mute and she does not have the ability to speak, so on and so forth. There was no such act of violence by other enslaved people against Carrie in that book. Period. So just the need to show black people being violent toward each other again takes the onus off the entire chattel slavery system that we are still feeling the ripple effects psychologically and economically and politically till this day. Quit playing with me. All right? Hulu FX, quit playing with me. All right? So everybody knew how to work with Carrie amongst the enslaved people in the book, like I said, because she was a mute. Nobody, not even Sarah, her mother, did that. Anyway, so Kevin asks why Rufus is stealing alcohol, and he goes, because he's bored. Now, he does get drunk in the book, but whatever. He was, his father's an alcoholic. So he says, well, why don't you just play with your friends? He says, well, I don't have any because my father either sold them all away or they all have to work now. And so Kevin basically tries to sympathize and say, well, I didn't have many friends growing up either. Um, Whatever. The mother starts complaining about how she is the mother, Olivia. Moving on from that scene where Rufus getting drunk, whatever, because they didn't give us much to talk about. So the mother, Olivia, remember the one that got resurrected out of nowhere? That one starts complaining to Dana back at her little log cabin when Dana returns from 2016 that she's stuck here in slavery. So Dana shows her the ring and goes and says, "No, you're not. I went back." And Olivia, the mother, like I said, who was resurrected out of nowhere and was never in the book, says she's not going back to 2016. That's too different. But she is leaving Maryland, and she's taking Alice, and may even go as far north as Canada. Dana screams at her, saying she's not even your kid. You said you were going to find somebody to take care of her. First of all, shout out to Malcolm X, Message to the Grassroots speech, 1964, when he talked about field slaves, when he said when somebody that was a runaway walked up to another slave and said, "Let's leave from here," that they didn't sit around going, "What? There's nothing better than here." They'd be like, "Anywhere is better than here," and they would run. Okay? Now, granted, we can problematize that speech a bit in terms of house slave and field slaves, but I understood the point he was making at the time. Okay? So she wants to stay in the 19th century as a black woman. Okay? After being at the least, prior to this, if we're going to try to make any sense out of Olivia being in this script, she was at least living in the post-civil rights era in America. But she wants to stay in 19th century America or 19th century Canada because we know those white people were so much better. Miss me with the bullshit. All right? Why? It's giving real Kanye West. It's giving real, yeah, they wanted to stay, so they did, and I don't like it. Okay? So it's also perpetuating, and this is what I thought even before they allude to it in the episode later. It's given, this Jezebel, oversexed black woman that began in slavery and the bad black mother, right? She has sex with all these men, then she has babies that she doesn't take care of, and if it wasn't for welfare, they wouldn't have children. They can't control their bodies. These are all the narratives that were created in slavery. Black women can't be raped. They like to be to have sex with us over and over again because they can't control themselves. They're animals from the jungle. This is the language. I'm not making this up. And then it continued to take on its own life as we got into the 1960s when black people could actually finally access relief or welfare programs, and the whole conversation became about, black women are just having kids so they can get government money. No, black women who worked for centuries for free and did not have access to welfare or relief programs that had existed at least 30 years before. In the New Deal programs under FDR, 1 and 2 had no access to that. And when it gets to the 1960s, all of a sudden they're just having children so they can live off the government. And everybody runs with this narrative. And to be sure, never once in American history have more black people been on welfare than white people. Period. The numbers aren't even in our favor in terms of our population. If all of us were on welfare, and we're not, that was never true. So even people who are thinking that, and this helps perpetuate, and I know it probably seems like, this is a long way around it. Well, fuck it. They done already created a long story about a bunch of bullshit and disrupting Octavia Butler's greatness. So you know what? Yeah, I can go off on one. So anyway, her mother's having a conversation with her, and she's like, "Well, Dana, you want to go back so bad?" You goddamn right she does. Her mother tells her, "Well, you want to go back. You could be helping people. Stop worrying about what I'm doing. You could be helping people." Dana never needed prompting in the story at any point in time to help other enslaved black people. In fact, she automatically identified with them despite telling them, I'm not a slave. She was always on point. And even in those cases, like, Dana was always helping. So this is bullshit. As if it doesn't even make sense. Here she is in the sci-fi world being pulled in and out. And you got the nerve to try to shame her for trying to go back? Like she came back on purpose? Quit playing with me. white people in Hollywood, quit playing with me. Black people who act like white people in Hollywood, quit playing with me. All right? So we get the scene with Kevin. And Wayland stops him when he shows back up, and he says, you know, I haven't seen you since you at that Christmas party. And Kevin apologizes. And he said, well, now that you gave me that information on Brodus's deviant behavior, his silence came at a price. So he signed over his land to him, whatever. So that's not how it happened in the book, but okay. So Wayland gives a new dress to a slave who he is sexually assaulting and raping. Okay. As I explained in another review, sex is never consensual when you own a human being. Chattel slavery, the owning of human persons in deed and policy as property. Okay? Miss me. And then he gives her her own cabin, and he says that's what the other slaves refer to as, quote, the Jezebel cabin. And he says it delights him. Okay. This is why this shit is wrong as far as the book, and it's also dangerous. Just like I just made the point about the Jezebel stereotype. And I had made a note of that even before this part came up. All of these things developed out of slavery. But also Tom Wayland in the book actually did not do those things. It was Rufus, once he got older, and Tom Wayland, like, was older and eventually will pass. But that was Rufus who did that. And he did it for Alice, who he managed to essentially force himself onto, enslave, and raped her over and over again. That's who he does that for. So this is just off. It's just off, and it's wrong, and nobody called it the Jezebel cabin, all this other bullshit. You know, give me a break. She came into the house, and then he could kick her out as he chose. Quit playing with me. So then we get this scene with Sarah, where Sarah has clearly poisoned the slave owners. But not for the reasons you think she would poison them. Oh, no. Margie Wayland demands that Tom Wayland, you know, when they're at this table, that they sell the temptress Carrie, who got drunk with Rufus, according to the Irish overseer who Luke snatched his gun earlier. And Sarah considers running because Margie Wayland is losing her fucking mind. Talk about sell her. The reason why she doesn't like Carrie or her mother, like I said, is because these children, even Carrie, is the child of Tom Wayland. Okay? So Sarah considers running, saying that nobody else will sell one of her children. I told you she had several kids sold. She only got to keep one. So Dana tells Sarah, well, you can't run. This is your home. I said, bitch, no it ain't. She is a slave. Sarah says I'll crawl on my knees to Philadelphia if I have to. Before I see another one of my children sold away, I'm going to leave. Dana has the nerve to sit in the slave quarters and counters her by saying, well, where will you go? First of all, that shit never happened in the book. Now, Octavia Butler did an excellent job of demonstrating how terribly oppressive, violent, and stringent the conditions were for enslaved black people. In fact, in the book, like I said, Dana never had to be prompted to help any other enslaved people, and actually was responsible for creating a distraction when other slaves tried to run away, so they wouldn't get caught. None of the enslaved people in the book talked to Dana, and Dana tried to make them feel like it was okay to be enslaved. Matter of fact, there were times where they kind of thought she was strange for talking too much. So who gives a fuck where she would go in Philadelphia? Anywhere is better than there. Shout out to Malcolm X. Okay? So let me get free first. Okay? And then I'll worry about the details. And at this point, I'm just like, what in the Uncle Tom's Cabin, Buck Dancing Coon, and Candace Owens is going on in this series? Cut it out. I'm mad. This is some foolishness. Okay? So apparently Sarah wanted to blame Winnie for poisoning the slave master, so that's why she had messed up her cake or whatever. That's making everybody throw up. So she could keep her position on the plantation. On the labor camp. Okay. House slaves, like I said, We can problematize Malcolm X's speech for some reason. I understood why he was making the point in his speech. But let's be clear. Enslaved people who worked in the house, and what we now refer to sometimes as house slaves, and then it comes with this connotation that you are overwhelmingly loyal to powerful white people who don't care about you. Fun fact, okay, and a fact, enslaved people who lived in the house or worked in the house were known for poisoning their masters to kill them. And they were also conduits that would let quote unquote field slaves know if their slave owner got wind of any rebellions or plans to rebel or run away. Those are the facts. And no, they weren't always lighter complexion. In fact, if you were lighter complexion in the United States, you had a less of a chance of working in the home because you were a constant reminder to the mistress of the home of what the enslaver does with his slaves. Yeah. They didn't like you because you were lighter. They actually hated you because of what you represented. Okay. So all this other stuff that people keep talking about with colorism and things like that, we can talk about it, but you need to understand the history of it before you get to having these conversations. Okay? Anyway, so Winnie, okay. And none of this shit's in the book. I'm not talking about stuff I'm talking about. None of this shit's in the book. Sarah poisoned to keep her a place on the plantation. If you don't get the fuck out of here. So Winnie is not a character in the book. Like, she still doesn't exist. Like the way Olivia is a made-up character. Okay? Quit playing with me, FX Hulu. So Dana then goes, of course, and reports back to her faux master, her pseudo master. I don't know, but the way she acting, I really don't know anymore. So Dana in the FX Hulu series goes back to Kevin and tells all the business from the slave quarters, and talking like Sarah wants to run away is a bad thing. Another fun fact. The most successful enslaved people that run away, and when I say successful, I mean they get away without being killed or murdered, actually came from border states like Maryland, Kentucky, and Virginia. Because it was far more difficult to run away, stay gone, and not get caught the longer the journey, essentially the further south you were sold. So actually, and Dana was actually well versed in the history of slavery in the book, but in this series, she don't know nothing, and she got to go talk to her white boss. Okay? So anyway, so Dana, next thing we know, Dana lies in bed with Kevin. And remember, they have purposely let us know they are not married in this series like they were in the book. Right? And that's not even necessarily where I'm just going with that. Let's not forget, he gave her a ride home from the restaurant where her dysfunctional family left her. And she didn't have a charger, and then she sleeps with him. And of course, in this case, they, are having sex in Tom Wayland's house like it's no big deal. And she is in control of the sex because, once again, we're going to perpetuate the Jezebel stereotype because white men have to really be pulled into this. It's just in a black woman's nature to get on top and act like that. Anyway, so they're lying in bed, but this is before they have sex, I guess. They're lying in bed, and he asked her why she brought him back with her. In the book, Dana did not have the power or control to bring people back as she wanted, to come in and out of time. That's why by the end of the book, you realize the power shift that Octavia Butler was building to. So then we find that Kevin's dumbass, or he's telling her, his dumbass has taken a job tutoring Rufus. In the book, Dana became Rufus's tutor because he couldn't keep up in school. And Kevin explained to Tom Wayland that his slave knew how to read to help him with his research. That was part of his traveling thing. That was part of the lie they told. Okay? Kevin also disappears and leaves Dana, which thus, under, Southern rules and living in a slave society, essentially and eventually makes her Wayland's property. Because even Kevin, when she goes back momentarily in science fiction, he doesn't stay for her. He doesn't look for her. He leaves her and goes and lives a whole nother life in different areas around the country and does not come back to look for his wife. And the point Octavia Butler was presenting is that when whiteness shows itself, it shows itself that it will not identify with blackness in this situation because he doesn't have to deal with these things. Okay. I can't stand how they've continued to allow Kevin to be the good white man in spite of chattel slavery. Here we are talking about an entire country situation at this point that has been built on the backs of free labor from enslaved African descendants living in America. The whole system is violent. The whole system of policing develops during slavery to keep black people under control. Okay? Charleston had the most black people in a single city at the time in the 19th century and also had the most police. Okay. All right? So, and that's in real life. So, but there's still these good white people. Rufus is still a well-meaning white person. All right? And even Dana and Octavia Butler in the book shows how even though Rufus can be kind of malleable, the bottom line is this slave system, he reinforces his power whenever Dana doesn't do something that he wants her to do. Okay? So, and of course, in being the good white person, Kevin is also the smart white man too. Despite everything to the contrary in terms of his behavior in this miniseries. Kevin's not smart in this miniseries. He continues to do dumb things and to be brain dead, but he's a good white person. Both of them were actually writers and aspiring writers in the book. Okay? But the reason why Tom and Margie were so suspicious of Dana was because their son didn't respond to anybody else's instruction when it came to learning. But he wanted to learn from Dana, who, as far as they were concerned, should have never learned to read or write, and they were very suspicious of her. But no, she has sex with Kevin in the Wayland household and is then going to proceed to tell Winnie why she should run away because she's going to be sold. She's going to tell her a lie so Sarah will stay on the plantation so she can, which has not been revealed in the miniseries appropriately, properly, or at the right time, because she is trying to only get out of slavery because she has to go back and fix what happens when Rufus Wayland attempts to rape her and members of her family. But yet she's going to encourage Winnie to run away and take that risk, while she told Sarah, please don't. This is your home. Does any of this shit make sense? Good, it shouldn't, because it's all a lie. So anyway, that's the end of this review for episode 5. And because I want to help preserve the integrity of one of the greatest writers that ever lived, and because I can't just assume that black women are going to get their due, I am going to finish it and finish going in. But anyway, y'all have a good day. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.